Look what we got. Time to put it in. So I was able to pick this transmission up for about $300. Alright, so that leaves us with $100 left for the $500 challenge. Fingers crossed I can do the brakes and a tune-up for less than that, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm not kicking the idea out yet, but we're not looking too good when it comes to the $500 challenge. But we're going to go ahead and throw this in today. It's a fairly simple process, so I'll go ahead and take you underneath the car and show you what needs to be removed in order to get the transmission out. Alright, underneath the car, dropping the transmission is actually fairly simple. So you have 3 bolts that hold this torque converter onto this flywheel. So you have to spin the motor over, get those 3 out. After that, around the top edge of the transmission, you have the bell housing. You have to take those bolts out. Then you have this cross member. There's 2 bolts on each end and then 2 bolts in the middle. And then you have the drive shaft to take out. But I want to show you guys. So this car's been in the garage for maybe an hour. And this is all fluid that has come out of this transmission. So there's a possibility that the kickdown cable was the problem. But I actually think as well, this thing leaked out so much fluid that somebody drove it really dry. So, well, let's go ahead and get started and take it out. Alright, so here's the new transmission. And there's the old transmission. A couple of interesting things about this old one. You notice somebody put on the tail shaft housing upside down. The sad part about this transmission is that I know it's been rebuilt. You can tell the torque converter's new. All the bolts that are in around the bell housing were all new bolts. So it's sad that this has been out before. And somebody just sucked at rebuilding it and blew it up. So, well, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'll end up taking probably the pan gasket and filter out of this one, since I know it's new since I put it in. I'm going to go ahead and put it in that one. Clean up that one real good, and then put the torque converter in it and throw it up on the car. And this one can go away. Alright, I have both transmissions up on their ends, and I'm replacing the gasket and the filter on the one that I'm going to put in the car. The cool part about it is this pan actually has a drain plug made into it, which is cool. One thing I do want to show you guys is the person who had a gasket on this before had used a cork gasket, but he just dumped tons of silicone in it. And I believe you can actually have a transmission pan without silicone, and I'll show you how it's done. So if you look at the pan like this, let's see if I can't prop this up. I don't know, if you look at the pan like this and you put a straight edge over each one of the holes, you can see that there's a fairly large gap in between each of the holes. So the way that happens is people over torque these pan bolts, and it makes that gap, and then no matter what you do, besides putting a whole bunch of silicone all over it, your pan's going to leak. So this actually happened on the Cadillac. I had to pull the pan off and fix it, but I'm going to show you what I did to fix it. I took a tool like this, so pretty much any straight piece of metal like this. You take it and you put it on I'm going to put it on my vise right here on this flat edge, and then you take just a hammer and you lightly tap on that in order to make these holes flush again. They kind of pooch out a little bit, and you need to bring them back together. So there's a little tip for you guys. If you ever do a pan gasket, make sure you do this, because you can put a brand new gasket on it and it still have a leak, and it would be a huge waste of your time. So there you go. Well, all the snow is melting and running down the side of the house. But here's another thing that I wanted to change. You take a look at this fan clutch. You can just see how much wobble this is, especially when it was on the car. It was up like this and just wobbling around. It was howling, making all kinds of noise. The other way you can tell that the fan clutch is bad, if it freely spins like this, you know the clutch is bad. So here we have this fan and fan clutch actually came off of my Corvette, before I upgraded to aluminum fans, but I know that this fan clutch is good, and you can tell that that's not going to spin freely at all. It doesn't wobble. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fan blades off of that clutch and put these fan blades, since they're original, on that one. And this is a $0 fix. I had it already just laying around, so that's why I keep parts around, because you never know when you're going to need them. Alright guys, here's a while I'm at it video clip. So take a look at that valve cover. That's what a little bit of chrome polish will do. It's actually quite amazing. So I have high hopes that this engine bay will clean up. Alright, now it's time to move on to brakes. We're going to start with the front brakes first. So looking at this rotor, it actually looks pretty good. Take your fingernail and you rub it along here, and you feel any ridges, you probably should get them turned. Now there might be a little bit of wear on these edges, but actually this rotor, let's try the back, front and back, does feel quite good. Okay, so we won't have to worry about the rotor. Now next is these pads. There's actually quite a bit of meat left on these pads. You need to check your cylinder in the back here for any kind of leaks, and then also check this line right here, check for any cracks or bulges or anything like that. So all this looks good. It just looks dirty. I hope I don't have to replace any of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean everything off with brake cleaner, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Oh, a leaf. That's why we do that, to get all this crap out of there. Alright, here's the driver's side front. You can see, let's see, this one's really dirty, but I think we'll be okay. We'll see what happens when we put fluid to it all, but it spins okay. So the pads look good on both sides. Rubber for the piston could look better, but we'll see if it leaks once we put brake fluid to it. So alright, on the rear brakes. So I'll take a look at the drum. Looks good, no scoring, really dirty, of course. That's typical. That's how it goes in Texas. Probably do a light sand over these shoes as well, just because. Here is the passenger side brake, rear brake. Sounds really gross inside. Car's done a lot of sitting, you can tell, but that's okay. Since the rest of the brakes look good, now it's time to go ahead and bleed the master cylinder. So this is a fairly simple process. It has to be done, and if you don't do it, you're never going to get good brakes. So the old master cylinder was leaking out of this back seal right here, and you can tell by looking at the brake booster, and you can tell this rear compartment was totally empty. The front still had fluid in it. So that was the issue with that. It's a brand new one. I got it for $22, so it was worth the money. So, but the way you do this is you fill these compartments up about a quarter of a way full, not all the way full. And what you want to do is you need to get a blunt object. I like to use a large Phillips screwdriver, and like this one, large Phillips, and you just push in this cylinder right here until all the air bubbles are gone. So fairly simple. You just do this over and over until there's no more bubbles coming out. You'll see the bubbles come out. So, and it also gets harder the more you push.